if you're not looking at the course information page yet, you can just click on the course link on the webcast page, or you can simply type into your browser conversationswithgodcourse.com and then scroll all the way down to the button where you can just select your payment option. And if you've ever done self-development work, you probably know that a weekly session with a coach or therapist can cost you as much as $400 or $500 a month.
You know what I'm proud of? I'm proud of, Ariel, that we're offering this program as a structure to not only allow people's life to change, but to develop at the deepest level. And also, and this is important to me, at a cost that makes it accessible as possible, as affordable as possible to as many people as possible. That's powerful, and that's important to me.
And it's, you know what, it's going to be important to a lot of people who've tuned in today as well, because getting you in this format, in this way, with this much depth, if they tried to actually get on a plane and go somewhere to see you, the plane ticket alone is more than that.
That's exactly right.
Now, I also want you to know that taking this step is completely without risk, because you're going to have 14 days from the start of the course, that's 2 full weeks, to experience the Conversations with God course and feel the changes as it inspires and transforms your life. During this time, if you decide for any reason that the course isn't making your life better or it just isn't right for you, just let us know and we'll refund your money, no questions asked. And I just want to say one last time that if you're not already on the course information page, you can read all about this by typing into your browser conversationswithgodcourse.com. conversationswithgodcourse.com. So as I said, the investment for the program is only $397. So just go ahead, choose whichever payment option works best for you, and then click on the register button. And that takes you to the secure shopping cart where you can check out and enter all your details. So now it's time to move into the Q&A, and we're so excited to offer this to you tonight. Neale, so many of the people who are here with us have questions about joining you in the upcoming course. So for those of you that are listening online, you can enter your questions in the Q&A box on the event page, and we'll answer as many of them as we can and as much time that we have, and we're also going to cover some frequently asked questions. So, Neale, you ready for the first question?
I sure am. Go ahead.
Okay. What kind of transformation can someone expect from taking the course?
Well, I think just about any kind of transformation, really, in the following way. I think that people can expect that their lives will become easier, a life of less strain, less struggle, less suffering, if I could put it that way, emotional suffering for sure, and I think they'll see their relationships, if they're in, really, even if they're not in a permanent relationship, they'll see their relationship experience, whether they're now in a permanent relationship or whether they're contemplating such a relationship, or even if they're just leaving such a relationship and preparing for a new phase in their life. Their relationship experience, my life has shown me, can be dramatically altered, actually relatively quickly. And finally, I think that the change I've seen in my life and that people have seen in theirs as well is a change in their financial experience. That is, most people find that the flow of income begins to loosen up and become not nearly as connected to what we feel we have to do, must do, and sometimes imagine ourselves that we are required to do, even if we don't like doing it, in order to produce sufficient income to survive and to enjoy the kind of life that we want to see. So we're talking really about, in a sense, a greater sense of financial abundance and security, relationships that go much more smoothly, and have much more of a ground of being in a spiritual place, and in general, a life of greater ease and a life of greater, how would I put this, a greater comfort in the sense that we suddenly understand what we're really doing here, why we're here on the earth to begin with, and how we can remove ourselves from the illusion that there are things that we must do, have to do, are required to do in order to live a happy, satisfied, and spiritually fulfilling life. I want to end my description with that. It's about becoming spiritually fulfilled, Ariel. It's about understanding the true reason and the true purpose for our existence on earth.
You know, you just said everything that almost everybody I know would want, you know, spiritual fulfillment, being on purpose, better relationships, more income, more security, more abundance, less suffering. That's just amazing. So, you know, now that you've been teaching this for decades to people all over the world, how would you say that this course is different from other approaches?
I think, well, there are many. I don't want to make any other approaches, you know, inappropriate or wrong or somehow less than. But I think that the difference would be that what I am sharing with people comes from a very deep. I don't. It's hard for me to say this because I don't want to sound like I imagine this to be somehow greater or better than somebody else's program. But what I'm coming from 3,000 pages of Conversations with God dialogue. What I share with people in the programs that I present is what was shared with me in those 3,000 pages. And while all truth is truth no matter what the source, there are different ways to articulate and different ways to emphasize and focus on certain aspects of how we can improve our lives and change our very experience, our day-to-day experience of being on the earth. So I guess what makes it different is the source material from which my program and my messages and my courses arise. And that is, all of it arises from the 3,000 pages of the Conversations with God dialogue. So I would say to anybody, if you've heard about the Conversations with God books, and if you've read one or more of those books, I think you'll become clear that there's nothing brand new there, nothing that hasn't been said before, but there's a way that it has become, that the information there has been rendered accessible, easy to understand, easy to access, easy to apply in a person's life. And I think that's what makes it perhaps different from some other courses, in that it arises from a deeply spiritual foundation, from a spiritual context. It's not simply a practical course that talks about the practicalities of increasing one's income and improving one's relationships, but the spiritual ground of being that produces those outcomes almost automatically.
And I would say one of the other benefits is that we get you, you know, and we not only do we get what came through you, we get you sharing how it impacted your life, which is just so incredibly special. There's a question here from Nahid who's asking, in the course, will I learn how to have my own conversation with God?
Yes, the answer is yes. I would never bring a course such as this to the world without offering that opportunity. There's no guarantee, of course, naturally. I'm very, very careful to make it clear that I do not guarantee that every single person taking the course will experience their own conversation with God. But let me make this point, if I can, around that, please. Everyone is having a conversation with God all the time. That point is made on page 5 of the 3,000-page dialogue. On page 5 of 3,000 pages, it says very clearly, I'm talking to everyone all the time. The question is not to whom am I talking. The question is who's listening. So what I have devised is a process that has worked for me and has worked for now thousands of other people, because I've shared it with people in workshops, in trainings, in programs around the world that I have done live around the world. This is the first time I've done it actually online, but I've done it live from Bonn in Germany to Tokyo and all over. Just came back, in fact, from China, from 2 weeks in China, excuse me, where I talked to thousands of people there in 4 different cities during a tour. But this is, now we're bringing this to the world in a different way through the program at Evolving Wisdom that places it online. So the short form answer to your question, my friend, is yes. We will share with you a process through which many, many, many people have, in fact, experienced their own conversation with God. We want to make it very clear to you that this opportunity to have a conversation with God is open to every single person on the face of the earth. And are there some ways that make it easier than other ways? Yes, there are, and we'll share some of those with you.
Now, we had a whole bunch of people ask this next question. It's quite popular. Doree from Thousand Oaks, Jean from Dearborn, Michigan, Virginia from Honolulu, Janet from New York, Claire from Medford, Lloyd from Albuquerque. They all want to know, in this course, will I learn how to know that it's not just my imagination or my ego, but it really, truly is God speaking to me? And what does that connection feel like, and how will I know it's working?
I can't tell you what the connection feels like in specific terms, my friends, because it feels differently to everybody. It's like asking, what does love feel like? It's like asking, what does an apricot taste like? I mean, it's different to everybody. So I can't be specific and say, well, what it feels like is A, B, C, D, E. But I can tell you that you will know the feeling when you experience it, just like you knew if you've had that experience the first time you fell in love, just like you knew anything that you deeply know that's really very, very, very important to you. For some, it's just an overall feeling, and I hate to sound trite and hackneyed, but I'm going to say it. It's an overall feeling of deep bliss, just a sense of blissfulness, and it may not stay with you for the rest of your days on the earth and for every hour between now and the time you leave our planet, but it will be present for you in many of those moments, and you will say, that's what it feels like to experience an in-the-moment, live, here and now connection with the divine. For others, it'll be a feeling of excitement. For others, it'll be a different kind of a feeling. I came to tears in my own experience, not obviously sorrowful tears, but tears of joy and tears of recognition. Oh, yes. You know what it felt like to me? What it felt like to me is having been away. Have you ever been away for a long time, weeks or months or even a couple of years or more, and then returned home? I had that experience in my life when I was away from my home of origin, my origin family, for 4 or 5 years as life's path took me. And then I returned home one Christmas after being away almost 5 years. And I remember how I felt when I walked through the door. Excuse me, when I recall how I felt when I walked through the door of my home, my family home. Everything was as it always had been. It was as if I had never left. And my mom was in the kitchen, my dad was in the living room, and I kind of snuck in. I didn't want them to know I was coming, so I just snuck in very quickly, and there they were. And that feeling for me was what it felt like when I had my first conversation with God. Oh, I'm home again. I wish I could say to you that there's a one-size-fits-all answer to your question. I can't, but I can tell you this. You're going to know it when you experience it. You're going to be very, very clear about that. There's no question in my mind about that.
That's something to really look forward to. Sophia from Sunnyvale is asking, I've studied so many things so often without really making lasting changes in my life. How can I finally be happy?
Wow, the course answers that question. You can finally be happy in 100 different ways, but first deciding what it is you're doing here. See, one of the reasons why many people are not happy on Earth is they don't know why they're here. And so could I put it this way without being offensive? And I can say this because I experienced it in my life, so I'm really, really calling myself out on this. For 50 years, I had no idea what I was doing here. That is, I didn't know what the objective of physical life on Earth really was. So I was out there playing the game that society taught me to play. Get the guy, get the girl, get the car, get the job, get the house, get the better car, get the better job, get the better house, get the spouse, get the kids, get the grandkids, et cetera, until I got to the end of the line, and then maybe, at the age of 75 or 80, finally get the gray hair, get the retirement watch, presumably before that, and then, and then get out. But that's not what life is about. And I didn't learn that until I was well into my 50s, and then I began to realize, my priorities are completely skewed and wrong. They're just in the wrong way. They're twisted in the wrong way. I wrote a book called The Only Thing That Matters, and the first sentence of that book, my friend, says this: 98% of the world's people are spending 98% of their time on things that don't matter. How can you be happy? I'm not going to take a course like we're talking about here and try to reduce it down to 30 seconds in an answer for you, but I can give you a broad brush stroke response. Change your life priorities. decide to approach your whole reason for being on the earth in an entirely different way. And the Course teaches you what that way is and shares with you how you can get from where you are to where you want to be.
There's a couple of quick questions here I'm going to answer, Neale, and maybe you can grab a glass of water because you've been talking a lot tonight. So one of the questions is, if I miss the Course sessions live, will I get the same benefit if I listen to the recordings? And yes, absolutely yes. What we've discovered here at Evolving Wisdom is that only 50% of the participants really ever show up live. The other 50% listen at a time that suits their schedule, and there's no difference in the results that you'll get from the program. So don't let your schedule or your time zone stop you from going through this very, very powerful training. So, Neale, we've got Nagy from Canada who's asking, is it possible to change my life being married to my wife of 43 years who is always negative and unforgiving?
The answer is yes, and it has nothing to do with your wife. The answer is yes, and it will occur, or at least can occur, when you do just as I talked about a moment ago. Begin to change your priorities, understand what you're doing here. Why are you on the earth? Who are you anyway? How can you activate that more fully and more frequently in your life? And you will be surprised at the shifts and changes that can take place, even inside of a relationship, or perhaps a work relationship at a place of employment that you're not enjoying, or in a long-term marriage that it requires you to be in constant contact with a person who may have a great deal of negative energy, more often than not. And you know what's surprising about this? I don't want to promise this. This is not an outright promise, but this is an observation I've made, having worked with hundreds and hundreds of people over the past 10 years on questions very similar to yours. How can I turn, that which is not now as wonderful as I would like it to be into something that's more wonderful? Here's what happens. When we change ourselves, when we shift our own priorities, our own understandings, our own activities, our own experience, our own energy projections, all of a sudden, people around us often pick up on that new energy and begin to shift their own energy as well. This is not an outright promise, but I wouldn't be surprised in the least if it's one of the things that happen. So don't be too surprised if after you move through a course such as this and begin to adopt and embrace many of the exercises, the programs, the suggestions that we make here in this course, that all of a sudden the person across the room starts to express themselves in their life a little bit differently as well. These things happen because energy is energy. And by the way, let me close that remark by answer to that question with this. My friend, when you understand that life is energy-based and that energy is a process that affects itself, that is, it's circular, and it affects everything within its energy field, it's impossible to make the kind of major changes we're talking about in this course inside of a relationship without having any impact at all on the relationship and the other people in it. Such a thing would be utterly impossible. It simply can't happen. Even as your wife's negative energy affects you now, you've just announced, by the way, you are living proof of that because you've just told me that. So even as your wife's negative energy affects you now, so too will your change of energy affect her then.
So, Neale, it's safe to say that, Nagy has a difficult wife, but all of us that are humans on the planet have somebody difficult in our lives somewhere, whether it's a sibling or a boss or a neighbor. We've all got some toxic person or many to deal with. So are you saying that being in this course will help transform all of these relationships?
It will certainly affect them. I don't know if I can go as far as say that it'll transform them utterly, but it will change two things. It will certainly affect those relationships and at least the way those people interact with you. They may not change, such that their entire experience of life with everybody else changes, but very often it will affect the way they interact with you. And the second thing that's even more important is it will change how you respond to the way they act, however they act. And that's the major shift. And
Right.
and the miracle of that is that when you change how you respond to however they act, they see that change. They see that shift in how you're responding, and that's circular. And suddenly they start interacting with you in an entirely different way. That's been my direct on-the-ground experience.
That is just completely invaluable. We can change the way we're responding to that. So Karen from the Netherlands is asking, Dear Neale, how can I silence the critical voice? Deep down I have the confidence, although the circumstances are really difficult. This worrying critical voice blocks my functioning and my creativity.
My advice to you would be to embrace your critical voice. See, what you resist persists. Conversations with God made that very clear to me in Book 1, and boy, did that change my life. So I stopped trying to stop those experiences. All those things that used to get in, that I thought were getting in my way, I made them my friends. So when I heard my critical voice come up to me, for instance, and say, "Oh, Neale, you know you're not going to be able to do this in the time frame that you promised, and you way overpromised in terms of results as well, and you do that all the time, and yada yada yada, blah blah blah." That whole negative voice that many of us hear. Instead of saying, instead of feeling bad about it or agreeing with it, instead of doing either one of those two things, I did a third thing. I thanked it. I'm going to give you a one-word tool that can change your life overnight. And the word is gratitude. When I stepped into the place of gratitude, when I heard that critical voice, when I said, and I actually had dialogue, inner dialogue with that critical voice. This may sound silly, but it works. I had an actual inner dialogue, and I said to that critical voice, "You know what? I know you mean the best for me. You're not here trying to make my life miserable. You're looking out for me. I don't necessarily agree with the conclusions that you always come to, but I absolutely agree with your decision to bring to me and to my consideration everything you think I need to know, everything you think I should consider in order to move forward with the decisions and the choices that I'm about to make. Thank you for that. Thank you for those ideas and those thoughts of yours. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to always welcome whatever it is you have to show me, and I'm going to accept that which I agree with, and I'm going to reject that which I don't agree with. And you know what? I'm going to start moving forward with my appreciation for your advice and for your insight. And suddenly that niggling, nagging voice starts to bother us a lot less. But more importantly, we begin to experience ourselves as being totally in control because of what choices we make with regard to the advice that we are getting, or even the criticisms that we're hearing from that critical voice. So you know what? I don't resist that anymore. I just accept that as part of my mind's job. My mind has been assigned, it's my little poem, my mind has been assigned to make sure that I survive, and it's telling me what it thinks I need to know to survive. But here's what I say to my mind, by the way, to end this answer. I say to my mind one thing: oh, I get it. I get it. You think that my primary focus and my primary purpose in life is survival. Not just survival in life to continue living long, but survival through this moment, survival through this particular challenge, survival through this particular decision I have to make. You think I'm concerned with survival. Well, I understand why you would give me that advice then, but guess what? My primary focus is no longer survival. My primary focus is the creation and the recreation of who I really am in the next grandest version of the greatest vision ever I held about that. That's my primary focus, and guess what? Friends, I'm not afraid of failure. And when I drop my fear of failure, and when I drop my idea that even failure exists, when I embrace the notion from conversations with God that there's no such thing as failure, my critical voice looked at me and said, well, if that's how you're going to be. And it began to stop being so critical of me. And I began to notice that it was no longer the driving force that made me shrink from major choices and decisions in my life. So my advice to you, stop opposing what your critical voice has to say. Welcome it, thank it, explore it, and then reject what you no longer think or believe serves you.
When my voice comes up, Neale, I always say, okay, thank you for sharing. You're wrong. Here's how you're wrong, and, go off and play now.
Yeah, and sometimes, and not to, yes, and so I do that too. And sometimes I say, you know what, you could be right. You know what? You could be right, but let's find out. Let's have some fun and find out. I'm not going to shrink back because I think that you're right. You could be right and you could be wrong, but you could be. It's a 50-50 chance. You could also be as right and you could also be as wrong. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to play. We came to this earth to experience the grandest notion of who we really are. And the grandest notion of me is that I refuse to sit on the sidelines and not even put on the jersey for fear that I might get tackled at the 30-yard line. You know what? I'm putting on the jersey, I'm getting out on the field, and I'm going to play. Play well. God said to me in conversations with God in one of the most delightful exchanges we ever had, Neale, play well.
Love that. So for those of you that are listening online and you've got a question for Neale, type it in the Q&A box on the event page and send it on in because we're going to answer as many as we can. Marguerite from New York is saying, I'm really busy between taking care of my son and job hunting, so I'm wondering what is the time commitment? How much time do I need to put in to get the most out of this course? And should I take it if I feel busy?
Yes, especially if you feel busy. Because you want to look at what are you busy at. And I get it. I hear you that the things you're busy at right now are very important to you. But you know what? What I learned years ago, even before conversations with God, if you want to get something done, go to a busy person. So I want to say to you that the level of your busyness should not impact upon, and it certainly shouldn't impinge upon your ability to step into that which can improve or immeasurably change your life for the better. So my answer to you is, now as to how much time it will take as much time as you want to give it. I wish I could say, it's going to take 14 hours, 30 minutes, and 17 seconds. But I can't say that because, once again, there's no one-size-fits-all answer to your question. But it will take as much time as you want to give it. But here's what's interesting, what we notice about people taking the course. Even those who feel they're too busy to take it, some of them have signed up just to see what it's all about, and they find the time. And they give it more time than they ever thought they would. And another aspect that we find, that some people, in fact, need less time than they thought they would need because their level of enthusiasm and the level of energy with which they approach the course assignments and the course experiments and the course activities, their level of enthusiasm makes them sometimes whiz right through it. And they call us and they tell us, you know what, this took a lot less time than I thought it would, and things are changing in my life virtually overnight. So I want to just say to you, it'll take as much time as you think it will take. But if you're a busy person, that's the very reason you want to take the course, because you want to make sure that your busyness produces the outcomes in the long run in your life for which you have yearned for these many years. Not only for which you have yearned, but which you have earned.
We have a question from Hermie from Namibia. And says, I work hard but still struggle financially. I am in God's service. Will this course help me create a breakthrough in this area of my life?
It very well may. No guarantees. I'm not going to sit here and say absolutely. But it very well may. But the larger breakthrough will be this. The larger breakthrough of this course may be for you that whether or not it changes your financial circumstance, it may very well change the level of happiness, joy, peace, serenity, and liveliness that you experience in your life. That is, your entire experience of life. Whatever your income could very well drastically and dramatically change such that, whether you believe it or not, the level of your income may wind up making virtually no difference at all. And there's an irony behind that. Because when the pressure is off, not because your income has changed, but because your attitude about your income has changed, when the pressure is off, suddenly our income does often automatically increase tremendously because we've stopped looking at it as walking across the living room with a tray full of wine glasses, 17 glasses that everyone is saying, don't spill it, don't spill it, don't spill it. And of course you do, because the pressure's on to get across the room without spilling a drop of that wine. Well, when the pressure is off, even though it's a very real circumstance, not making light of it, a very real circumstance, I have some financial pressures. But when we decide to take the pressure off, all of a sudden, our creativity and the energies surrounding the way income comes to us is released. And very often, very frequently, what happens is our income does increase. And I want to say, this is a dangerous word to say, but I'm going to use it anyway. Often our income increases effortlessly. That is, things happen in our life. We're offered opportunities. Things happen in our life that we don't know. We didn't deliberately try to make them happen. Things just fall into our lap. That's been my experience. Stuff has fallen into my lap I wouldn't have dreamt of 15 years ago, just out of the blue. So, but that's not a guarantee. Be real clear what I'm saying here. That's not a guarantee, but it is my observation of how very often it works. So I want to say to you that when you move through this course, you will learn how to shift the way you are experiencing insufficient financial resources. And that shift will change, or very likely could change, the level of resources itself.
And, I first learned that from you years ago about just knowing that money will fall into my lap. And every week when I write up my accomplishments for the week, and I write them as if they've already happened, I always write down an X amount of dollars just fell into my lap. And almost consistently from unexpected places, it happens. So I can testify this stuff really works. Kinneret from Israel is saying, "Hello, Neale. Thank you for the opportunity to ask a question. It means a lot for me. What is the connection between psychological therapy and the spiritual journey? And how can I know if I need to go to therapy or can heal myself in some way?"
I wouldn't advise you not to go to therapy if you felt that there was some therapeutic insight or therapeutic assistance that would be of value or benefit to you. But I can't answer the question, what's the difference? The difference is that standard therapeutic models do not generally, and rarely do they consider, spiritual realities, and much less use spiritual insights in order to alter or affect or help a person change one's behaviors or responses in life. So the difference is the basis, the ground of being, the data, if you please, from which one comes when one is approaching the solution of one's life problems from a spiritual point of view. There's a marvelous description of all of this in a book called When Everything Changes, Change Everything, which talks about the mechanics of the mind and the system of the soul. By the way, but the point that that book makes, by the way, is not to abandon one for the other. It makes it very clear that life is a question of balance. So I wouldn't suggest abandoning any kind of therapeutic intervention or therapeutic model that you think might in fact be of some benefit to you. But I would say do not do it exclusively to the elimination of any kind of spiritual insight or spiritual perspective that you might take. And likewise, do not take just a spiritual perspective and a spiritual point of view and eliminate from your considerations any kind of standard therapeutic intervention that might be worthwhile. Use both. There's no reason why you can't. There's zero reason why you can't. But the difference between the two is very simple. Standard therapeutic intervention comes from the limited data of the mind. Spiritual intervention, overlaying a spiritual model and embracing a spiritual perspective as one views one's life challenges, embraces a database that is eternal and unlimited. And what that's done for me in my life, my friend, is it's caused me to consider my life challenges and my life problems in an entirely different context, in an eternal context rather than a here and now context. And that has shifted dramatically some of the choices and decisions that I've made in my life and the way I view and respond to life's events as well. And that's where real behavioral change occurs, when we shift our reaction and our response to life's many events. And what causes that shift in that response to take place is a change in perspective. Remember that perspective creates perception. Perception creates your belief about a thing. Your belief about a thing creates your behavior, and your behavior creates your experience. When you shift your perspective and broaden it to include the perspective of the soul, all of the other dominoes fall, and your perception changes, your beliefs change, your behaviors change, and your experience changes. That's the model you'll find in that book. When everything changes, change everything.
Okay, here's another question for you. It came in anonymously. It says, Neale, I don't feel like I'm living my purpose. Will this course help me?
I hope that it will. The answer is that it should, if you follow the recommendations and listen carefully to what the Course is sharing with you. But you know what, my friend, your life purpose is not something. How can I put this? Life purpose is not necessarily something you're doing, but your doingness in life, the things you do in the days and times of your life, are best beneficial, are the most beneficial, when they are reflections of a choice in what I'm going to call beingness that you have made. And that's one of the main points that the Course will bring you. It will assist you in shifting the priority focus of your life from what am I doing, what am I doing, what am I doing, what is my purpose, what is my purpose, what is my purpose, to what am I being, what am I being, what am I being, in the day-to-day, moment-to-moment experience of my life, in the expression of my highest self. And when I am being that fully, what purpose arises in my life automatically? Life is not a process of discovery. Life is a process of creation. So when someone asks me, how can I discover what my life purpose is, I tell them you can't. You can't discover your life purpose, but you can create it. And you can create it automatically out of your state of being. So, and I know that's a lot to throw at you here in a 30-second answer, but when you engage yourself in the process that this Course will involve you in, you will have a much deeper explanation of what I'm saying here and be able to apply this articulation to your everyday life.
Thank you. Mary Ellen from Berkeley is asking, when someone is chronically ill without easy medical answers, how do you interpret life as perfect in those circumstances?
By understanding what the reason for the medical condition is. And by the way, this is an important thing I'm going to say to you right now. The reason does not exist ipso facto. That is, the reason that the medical condition exists does not exist out there somewhere in the universe and you simply uncover it or discover it or somebody whispers in your ear. The reason that anything occurs is the reason we give it. That's one of the most empowering things that God ever said to me in my conversations with God. I want you to listen very carefully to what I just said to you. There is no reason for anything, your medical condition or anything else on the planet, that exists out there in the universe, that we just have to, if we turn over enough rocks or look behind enough trees, we'll discover the reason. What God said to me is, stop looking for the reason for anything, whether it's your medical condition or anything else, and start giving it a reason. So if you were clear about what I just said, you would then sit down with your highest self and you would say, okay, if I could give this medical condition a reason, what would it be? And you would be surprised, sometimes shocked, at the answer that your higher self will give you. And that answer very often not only allows us to embrace the medical condition and to endure it with much greater equanimity and much less suffering. By the way, pain and suffering are not the same thing. The pain may not be different, may not be less, but the suffering could be a great deal less. But it will could not only cause you to experience your medical condition with a great deal less suffering, a great deal less angst, and a great deal more equanimity. But furthermore, that shift of energy, here we go again, might actually begin to positively affect the medical condition such that its negative impact on your life is reduced gradually day to day. I speak again here from experience. I wouldn't dare say something like that to you, except I want you to know that I have a chronic medical condition, which years ago was not fun. I mean, I don't need to get into it, but I can promise you it was not fun. That is, it caused me not a little bit of pain, and not just once in a while, but chronic pain. But when I used the process that I'm sharing with you now and gave it a reason and welcomed it into my life based on the reason that I gave it, then the suffering that I experienced from the pain that I was enduring was reduced dramatically. And that shifted my energetic ground of being such that the conditions themselves have reduced remarkably through the years. I'm feeling better now at 72 than I was at 56, and that is the truth of it. And everyone who knows me tells me that you even look better than you did when you were 60, and it's true. I can't listen. I want to make real clear here. I don't want you to think for 1 minute that I'm promising you anything. No promises, no guarantees. I can only come from my own personal experience. But I can tell you this: stop looking for a reason for your medical condition and start giving it one. And when you give it one, you will come up with the most extraordinary insight from the highest place within you that could shift the context within which you hold your medical experience and change how you move through life with regard to it.
Neale, can I just ask you, I'm just going to make something up here. So for instance, let's say you have, a chronic debilitating thing, let's say like Lyme disease. What is a potential thing reason you could make up for having it?
That's a different answer for everyone. Let's just use mine. Let's just use my. If you want to get specific, let's just use a real life example. I have peripheral polyneuropathy. It's a great big long bunch of syllables. That means I can't feel anything from my knees on down to my toe tips. But I gradually through the years began to lose feeling, first in my toes, then in the rest of my foot, then in my ankle, then in my shins, then right straight up to my knees, and going up higher every day, every year, gradually until I begin to lose feeling everywhere in my body. So that's not a fun thing, but the bad part about it was not only did I lose feeling, but the pain of it was the random nerve firings that accompany this condition. That when you lose feeling, what happens why you're losing feeling is that your nerves are firing for one last time and then they're dying out. I'm being very simplistic here. This is not a medical explanation, but how the doctors explained it to me in just layman's terms. Well, the result of that was that whenever I lost feeling in one more nerve, it fired, and it was like somebody was jabbing me with a pen knife. That's been my experience for the past 15 years. One nerve in my leg at a time. Now, I can tell you that made going through the day a very interesting experience. It made trying to fall asleep at night a very interesting experience. Until I decided, you know what? Because you got to know that for the first 5 years of this, I was running around asking God, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? Why do I have to do this? I'm still a relatively young person. If I was 95 or 104, fair enough, but come on, I'm not even 60. Why is this happening to me? Why? And God said, indeed, why is it? I said, no, you don't understand. I'm asking you. She said, no, I'm asking you. You need to give it an answer. You need to give it a reason. I'm not going to give it a reason, because you created it to begin with. That's another whole story. But why is this happening to you? And God challenged me to give it a reason. And I gave it a bunch of reasons. Number one, so that I might know who I really am, that I'm larger than that is not who I am, that I am not my body, and I will not succumb to imagining that I can't be happy, joyful, carefree, wonderful, serve the world, serve others, and experience a joyous life, even if it's the last minute I have on earth, because of this particular pain and this particular condition. So it's happening to me as an opportunity because I have wanted at the soul level to test the reality of who I really am. And I created a contextual field within which I can do that. Number two, I decide that I'm having this experience so that I could better relate and more closely understand the pain and the suffering and the challenges faced by other people, because I never really felt into that. I could be around people who had chronic conditions, and I really didn't quite, how do I put it, get it. I just didn't get it. I couldn't really relate to them in a way that could allow me to give them insight and advice and spiritual counsel and spiritual comfort and succor and be there for them in a personal and very real, meaningful way. This has increased my compassion ratio by 1,000%. Those are two. I could give you 10,000 more reasons as well. Those are the first two reasons that I came up with. And when I decided that was the reason that I was given this condition, I not only welcomed the condition, but it changed for me because I no longer opposed it. I said, okay, now I see why this is happening. And I was able to move into that. Here's that magic word again. Believe it or not, gratitude. Thank you, God, for peripheral polyneuropathy, or I never would have been able to sit down with this person who I'm counseling right now across the room from me, who is having some physical conditions of their own, and really relate and understand. And by the way, you don't have to be a counselor or a spiritual messenger to use that particular reason. Just a person moving through life. Thank you, God, for this condition called peripheral polyneuropathy that allowed me to get in touch with who I really am, to separate myself from the ancient thought that I carried since I was 5, that I am my body. Thank you for allowing me to notice now that I'm larger even than that through this particular experience, which I probably wouldn't have understood if I didn't have this particular encounter. And thank you, God, for allowing me to notice as well how lucky I am in my life, the wonderful glories and the good things of my life, in contrast that this contextual field has allowed me to experience. And there are many, many other reasons as well that I've been able to give that have allowed me to, I want to say, spiritually rationalize the physical condition that I have noticed is occurring in my life. And by stopping my opposition to it and embracing it with gratitude, the very shift of my ground of being with regard to it has slowed the process itself of the physical degeneration of the nerves in my body. The doctors have said to me, wow, what's going on? This thing has slowed down tremendously. I said, well, you know what? There's a little miracle in the air. It knows it can't get to me anymore, so it's decided to shift the energy. But I can tell you this, that's a real-world practical example. There's a reason that everything is happening to us, whether it's a medical condition, the breakup of a relationship, the loss of a job, whatever it might be that we don't think is the most wonderful experience of our life. When we give it a reason, when we assign it a purpose, we suddenly begin living into that assignment, and it shifts our ground of being with regard to the whole reality. This is called transformation. People's lives have been changed with this kind of information.
Thank you for being willing to be so vulnerable and transparent and share your personal story with us. I know I just had a real shift in thinking around this with one of my chronic things, so I really appreciate that, Neale. Rick from Christchurch is asking, Neale, will this course give me insight to understand why bad things happen to good people?
We're just talking about that. Isn't that funny? I hope so, because you will decide why so-called bad things happen to good people. And you will begin to realize that what Conversations with God said in Book 1, See the Perfection, that everything is perfect in its own way, designed to create a contextual field that allows us to more accurately and more magnificently decide and declare, express and fulfill, become and experience who we really are. And I don't want to be irreverent here, and I don't want to be religiously inappropriate, but may I use an example that occurs to me in my life? Sure. A man named Jesus, of whom most of us are aware, moved through some very difficult and challenging experiences in his physical encounter with life. The key theological question of the millennia, really of all time, would be this with regard to that particular person's experience. Did those things happen to him or through him? Did not just his crucifixion, but the other experiences he had in his life as well, was that happening to him or was that happening through him? If we say, well, no, it wasn't happening to him, Jesus wasn't the victim of those situations, he obviously created or co-created with God those experiences. If that's our theological point of view, we needs must ask the next key question, why? Why in the world would Jesus actually deliberately, working in concert with the God of his understanding, create those kinds of horrific physical experiences? Why would he do that? And the answer becomes clear. So that you might know who he really is, and through the demonstration of it, cause all of us to know who we really are as well. Wow. Wow. What if I just decided that the same was true about my particular physical condition, about my particular, forgive me for using the word, about my particular crucifixion in life? What if I decided that the same reason holds true for every single human being on the earth? What if we're all here to create a contextual field within which we can experience who we really are and demonstrate it so magnificently that someone else's suffering is reduced, if not eliminated altogether? Wouldn't that make it worth it? Well, my friend, it sure has for me.
Love that. Got another question here, but I actually know the answer to this one. Cindy from Columbus is asking, I might be working and I don't know what my schedule is. Will there be an audio version of the course that I can listen to? Yes, Cindy, all the recordings will be available and you can listen in at any time that suits you. And one of the things I want to mention here, one of the things I so love about the course that you offer, Neale, is all the live sessions that you do to mentor the participants. I know that it's one of your favorite things to do, that you really love going deep and close and intimate with them and answering questions. And what I want the listeners to know is that this is just such a really special, incredible opportunity that you get on a near weekly basis to be guided personally by Neale and to receive his wisdom and his guidance and his advice. So I really want you to pay close attention to that very important part of the course. And I want to encourage everyone who's now feeling called to join Neale and the global community of kindred souls on this journey to go ahead and register tonight, because if you register tonight, you're going to receive Neale's special ebook, Dissolving the Illusion of Lack, and you'll get that tonight right away so you can get started moving into more connection, more ease, and more flow in your life. Plus, by registering tonight, you'll also be part of an intimate group who will have the opportunity to meet Neale and personally connect during a live online video gathering to unlock your divine wisdom. At this really exclusive special gathering, you'll be joining the others in the Conversations with God community with Neale, and you'll have the opportunity to connect directly with everyone that's going to be taking the course together. Neale will be guiding you and the rest of the group through a special exercise to help you reconnect with your divine wisdom in a very, very powerful and direct way. And Neale, I know how much you love talking to people and answering their questions live and connecting with them personally. Can you speak for just a moment about the power of these video gatherings?
Well, I think that what it does is it makes it real. That is, it makes all that we're talking about here real. It makes the opportunity real. It moves it from wishful thinking and hopefulness to a level of reality that we might not have thought about before, in terms of not only our ability to create and recreate ourselves anew in a grander and more wonderful version in our life, but in fact in terms of our ability to connect in a here and now way with that aspect of the universe, that aspect of the cosmos that I call God, and to use that connection as a practical tool, not just simply an esoteric experience. It's wonderful, it is that, but also as a practical tool to connect us with the highest source of wisdom and clarity that exists within every one of us, and to use it as a practical way as we move through the days and times of our 9-to-5 experience. So I think that the power of it is that it offers us opportunities that don't often come along in life. I mean, listen, the only sadness of my life, excuse me, the greatest sadness of my life is that I had to wait until I was 53 years old till I even began to grasp a little bit of this. And now I'm 72, and I've lived with the experience that Conversation with God has given me for almost 20 years. I'll be 73 in a few weeks, and that'll be my 20th year of living with this information. But I can, oh gosh, this is hard for me to say. I don't want to overpromise, but I want to say this. This I can say to you calmly and with confidence. It shouldn't take you the 20 years it took me to get to the place that I find myself today, where I feel so joyous and so happy and so wonderful to be alive. In spite of all the medical conditions, all the challenges, I still face the same challenges in many ways that others do, but I experience them differently. I experience them in such a way that the challenges are resolved in front of me almost effortlessly. That's the truth of it. But I don't want you to have to wait 20 years to have that awareness and to move into the possibility of that identical experience. I promised God, well, I'm going to get soapy here now. Please forgive me, but I made a promise to God when I finish with my dialogue. Give me the time, and I swear that I will touch as many people on this planet as I possibly can to reduce the time they have to wait to get to what I have come to understand, thanks to my that Conversations with God experience. I have this saying that I sometimes use on myself: so old, so soon, so smart, so late. But it doesn't have to be that way with you. And what I'm sharing with you is not exclusive to Neale. This is the great spiritual wisdom that all the spiritual masters, of which I am not, by the way, but that all the spiritual masters in the world have been sharing with us for centuries and for millennia. But somehow it's come clear. That's why millions of people have found that clarity in the Conversations with God material. So what is the power of this? The power of this is, gosh, dare I say it, it could change your life overnight.
And I know in this video gathering you've got a very special exercise to take everybody through that's going to have a very, very profound impact, and everybody's going to be able to see each other during the exercise. So another good reason to sign up right away. Neale, the ebook that is part of the special bonus for tonight, Dissolving the Illusion of Lack. Tell us just a little bit about that.
It does exactly that. It just shares principles that I have learned that allows us to dissolve the illusion of lack, that allows us to know that lack is, that is the effects of lack are illusory. And when the effects of lack become illusory, lack itself begins to change as well, because we see it. See, right now we are like, I often make this statement, we are as a magician who has forgotten his own tricks. We are like magicians. We've forgotten our own tricks. But what happens is when we open ourselves to a new perspective and a new perception about really what life is really all about, it changes the way we hold the experience of every aspect of life, including that aspect of life that we call lack. We begin to shift our ground of being regarding the illusion of lack, and we therefore dissolve that illusion and see it for what it really is. Not lack at all, but perfectly designed for us to experience life itself more grandly than we might ever have thought possible. So I want you to know that the book, the little booklet that I put together, discusses and moves people into clarity around that and helps them to really understand that lack itself, as is true of most of life, is an illusion. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't feel real. It can feel real, but it also can be eliminated from our life when we shift our perception and our ground of being with regard to it. And more than one person has experienced that change in their life. So what the booklet does, it gives you the foundational metaphysical spiritual principles around this business of lack and allows us to see it, frankly, in a simple sentence, to see it in a new way.
Love that. All right. This is all the time we've got for tonight. So, Neale, I just want to thank you so much.
I've enjoyed being here. Thank you, my friend, and thanks to all the teammates at Evolving Wisdom. All I want to do with my life is share this information with as many people as possible, as rapidly as I can. That's all I really want to do. And Evolving Wisdom has made it possible to do so for many, many people in a way that makes it accessible for them, easy to use, puts it right there in front of them, makes it financially easy as well. I'm so grateful to the Evolving Wisdom team and the whole family there for providing such a wonderful platform, and I hope that people will take advantage of it. One final thing I might want to say. My dear friends, if you're still listening to this program, I want you to ask yourself a question. Do you think it's a coincidence? Do you think it's just serendipity? Do you think it's just an odd happening in your life that you happen to be listening to these words right now and that you've been listening for the past many minutes to what's been said here? Or do you think that you might just have been led here by a part of yourself that's been asking yourself, gosh, what are the answers? Help me. Send me some help. Send me some insight. I don't want to go on like this anymore. Send me some help and send me some insight. Look to see what causes you to be here right now and follow the impulse that brought you here to begin with.
And to do that, just go right now and click on the link that says visit the Conversations with God webpage. That's below the player box on the webcast page. Or simply type into your browser conversationswithgodcourse.com.